Hello everybody, Ben Woodruff here, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about Javelina, also known as the collared peccary. This is a fascinating species. I've been obsessed with them ever since I was a kid. I think they're amazing, but I've never gotten a chance to see one in the wild. I've seen them in zoos, and I have access here to a taxidermy mount of a Javelina that we'll take a look at, as well as I have a skull of one that we're also going to get a nice close look at. But this is a species that is in the American Southwest as well as all throughout Mesoamerica and down on into South America. So we're going to talk about this species first as an animal, and then we're going to talk about its implications and interaction with ancient peoples in the Southwest United States as well as Northwestern Mexico, and any sort of totemic or value that would have had of spiritual reasons. So we're going to jump into this. So the Javelina, first of all, the Javelina is a type of peccary. Now there are three types of peccaries. So first of all, there's the white-lipped peccary, and then there's the Chacoan peccary, and then there's the collared peccary, which here in the United States we call the Javelina. Now you can look at a map here and see a lot of their ranges overlap. I think the collared peccary is arguably the most famous. I believe it's the largest, but they're not very large. Now, the interesting thing about this, if you look at this, at first instinct, you're going to see, especially when you look at the nose, the build, the head, everything, you're like, oh, it's some kind of a pig. Well, if you go online and try to research this animal, people who are passionate about it love to say, oh, this animal that looks like a pig, but it's not. It's something else entirely different. And they're like all hoity-toity about it. Well, let's get really specific about this. Let's answer this. First and foremost, what is a pig? Okay, well, if we're being really specific, a pig, a hog, is just a domestic pig. So then, if you look at a warthog and say, yeah, it's a kind of wild pig. No, it's not a pig. It's a warthog. You see what I'm saying? Okay, so a pig, granted, is a very specific species. There's many other members of the Suina suborder that are not pigs, but they're pigs. So let me give you an example. I am big into camelids. Camelids today, we have several. We have dromedary camels. We have Bactrian camels. We have guanacos, which have been domesticated into llamas. And we also have vicuñas, which have been domesticated into alpacas. These are our living camelids. Now, all of them can interbreed. Now, they're far enough apart, that's been done with artificial insemination, but they make viable young. So we've crossed llamas and camels. So in that sense, llamas are a type of camel, meaning they're all camelids. So everything that's a camelid, I will casually use the term a camel. I'll say, a llama is a type of camel, right? And somebody can be like, oh, well, the term camel actually only refers to dromedary camels and Bactrian camels. Well, I mean, if you're going to be that specific, llamas are domesticated, right? There's an extinct animal whose name is Paleolama from the Ice Age in America. It can be a llama, but it's the common name. So again, common names are thrown around a lot. I think there's nothing wrong with casually calling a Javelina a type of pig. It's because it is in the same suborder as Suina. So with that suborder, you've got your regular domesticated pigs, right? They're in that family, which I will point out, they're usually bare-skinned or very fair-haired. The interesting thing is, if they get loose within a generation or less, they go feral and they get wild hair, and they look no different pretty much than a wild boar. They get super long bristly hair, their tusks get bigger, and they go back to their wild feral state. Now, true wild boars look pretty much the same. They have, the big old nose and big old tusks and, big old, razor back going down the edge there. And you have the same thing. Warthogs are a bit different. Warthogs, true warthogs, like in Africa, they have upper and lower tusks, but the face is more flattened out. But again, somebody would casually look at a warthog and say, hey, look, it's a type of wild pig. Now, the people who say a javelina is not a pig, it's the same thing. Okay, well, a warthog also is not a pig then, because if you're going to be really specific, a pig is very specifically a domestic pig. Now, all the other of the suborder Suina, all the rest of that lineage branched off quite early on. So the New World pigs, as I'm calling them, the New World members of the suborder Suina are all just the collared peccary, the white-lipped peccary, and the Chacoan peccary. Those are the three. All the rest have been Old World. Now, what happened was the New World ones were doing their thing, and about 3 million years ago, as a bunch of volcanic activity that happened in Panama united North and South America. And when that happened, the peccaries started to colonize further south. So nowadays, we very much think of it as really kind of a South American, a tropical species that has kind of ranged up into the southwest of Mexico, or the northwest of Mexico and the southwest of the United States, but really it's a southern species. But really, it was far more northern. Same thing with jaguars. Jaguars were a North American species, and once that Panama opened up, then they started going southward and doing their thing. And when that happened, now we think of them as South American, but jaguars very much started in North America and were all around the place. Now it's interesting, at the La Brea tar pits in California, we have documented the remains of a small species of peccary there. And that's very unusual, because in today's world, we don't really think of, we kind of think of southern Texas, southern New Mexico, southern Arizona is where we see, these javelina. But apparently there might have been the same species. I think it's currently classified as a different species, ranged all the way up into mainland North America and all the way over west to California. Now this is only about 9,000 or 10,000 years ago that these remains were found, and they would have likely lasted much longer after. They're not here anymore. So this will play into some things I'm going to talk about a little bit later on. So as a species, they are pig-like, and they're in the same suborder as pigs. So I view them as a type of wild pig, but again, they're a different branch of that same lineage. But again, we only have 3 true wild members of this suborder, and that's those 3 that I mentioned. But all throughout the United States, there are groups of wild pigs that are feral pigs, that are domestic pigs that have gotten loose, and they've gotten extremely violent and aggressive. They tear up, they'll attack dogs, they'll attack people, and they'll tear up roots of stuff, and their hair is super long and bristly, very much like a wild European boar. These cause so much damage that there's hunts that go on, and the people actually have to take them out because they'll even attack cattle and things like that. They're very aggressive. Now, javelina can be aggressive. They're not usually as such. They're a very interesting species. The people I've talked to who've encountered them, and also I recommend going online and just look up videos of them in the wild. It's really cool to see them, because people will call them in. They'll make a call of like a wounded animal, and they'll just make these kind of grunting, wounded animal calls, and you'll see people filming them. And these javelina will come from like a quarter of a mile, half a mile away, and just come charging. They think a fight's going on. They're like, I want to fight. Or there's a wounded animal. I want in on this action. And they come charging, and then they see you, and they're like, oh. Sometimes they'll jump at you, but usually they go, they freak out and run away. They're incredibly fast. And the territory they're going through, their skin, their fur, their hairs are so bristly. It is amazing what they punch through. Some of the most harsh foliage that could be imaginable of cactus and churro cactus and all these kind of spiky plants and rough underbrush, that if you went through it all, it would shred your pants. And they go charging through it, and it doesn't seem to bother them at all. And they can it's amazing. They can appear out of nowhere and then just disappear like it's no problem whatsoever. They love to fight. They're built in just like any pig. I know they're not a pig, but just like any member of the pig family, they love to fight each other. It's part of their thing. And it's fun watching some of these videos where they'll go at it, where they'll be eating something together, and one will do a slide move, and then one will do a slide move, and then go and fight again. They just got to attack each other. they have tusks that are pretty impressive and can do a lot of damage. I've seen a lot of videos and reports online of attacks. Now, attacks are rare. It is not normal for people to get attacked. But in the case that it rarely does happen, they cause a lot of damage, and that you're definitely getting stitches. It's not going to be pretty. These are omnivores, so they will eat meat. They mostly eat plants. They'll eat a wide range. The deserts of the Southwest, New Mexico and Arizona and northwestern Mexico are just filled with so many edible plants. It's a desert, so most desert plants have got to store their water, and they guard their water with spikes and spines. But animals that are built for the desert just chew on through it. Camels are the same way. Got to do my camel plug. Camels love. I'm watching videos online of people feeding camels. Just here's a cactus. Here's a full cactus, spines and all. They're just woof it down, and it's sweet to them, and it's filled with moisture. A cactus is filled with moisture if you can get at it, and the javelina love to get at it. They'll eat all kinds of succulent plants that are filled with moisture in the desert. So they can do a lot of damage as well. Now, this is an animal that has become very adjusted to human presence. Even though they're very skittish, and you can't get near them, especially if you're hunting them. But then you'll have them walking down your neighborhood or walking into your garage. Garage door is open and you can't get out because there's a javelina sitting there, and they're just that's just how they are. And they will come through those areas. Now, with those tusks, one of the things they do is they'll clack them. That clack, 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 clack. And that's one of the ways you know they're coming. They also have a very pungent smell. They have scent glands, and sometimes people call them skunk pigs because oftentimes, especially the males, will exude such a smell. You'll smell them coming before you see them. So again, this is a really fascinating species. And again, we don't think about wild pigs of any kind in America, at least not here in the western United States. I know in the South, there's a lot, in Florida and Texas and stuff, there's a lot of wild pigs that have gone feral and they're basically become wild boars. So I get that, but not out here. Out here, our deserts are comparatively peaceful. I'm in northern Utah, and I spend a lot of time on this channel in southern Utah in the Four Corners region. And so for me, I live in the strangest place on earth, the strangest level, stratigraphic level, because I am far north enough that I get Arctic animals that migrate here. We get gyrfalcons from the north, from near the North Pole, that come down here. We get snowy owls in my state, in my area. But at the same time, from the south, we have things like Mexican spotted owls. We have things like common black hawks, which is really a Mesoamerican tropical species. We had, a few months ago, we had a crested caracara that showed up in northern Utah. This is like Mexico's national bird. It's like, this is not a Utah bird. So I live in this really strange boundary between the north and the south. I'm right in the middle, and I get that overlap. And so for me, the idea of being this close to javelina, it's just so fascinating, because that's like proper, Sonoran, Mojave, it's just epic to think of javelina. So I want to see them. I want to see them in person. I have seen them in person in zoos and at breeding facilities and stuff, but I want to see them in the wild. Hopefully I'll be able to bring that to this channel. But now let's talk about them as far as, hold on, I got to get back into a little bit more. I got to talk a little bit more about this animal. We haven't talked about the structure. So the skull itself, let's take a look at this skull. The skull itself, it does have tusks, mention those tusks, and it has very pronounced, very well-developed molars. So this is an animal that is extremely good at processing a wide range of food, and it has no problem eking out a living in the desert. In some of the harshest deserts in the New World, this species fattens up with no problem. The sagittal crest on top is very pronounced, and that anchors incredibly strong jaw muscle. So again, this is an animal that can chew. The neck of this animal is incredibly muscular, very powerfully built. Now, this holds up that big, enormous head, but this also allows that thrusting motion with those tusks. So if the males want to fight, or if there's a predator that they're going to fend off, then they have that ability to back up all that bravado. The feet are tiny. Oddly, the back feet are smaller than the front. If you look at the front feet and you compare them to my hand or my fingers there, they're not very big. They're not very big at all. And the fact that the back hooves are even smaller than just these tiny, tiny little hooves. So these guys are dangerous, but they're a lot smaller than you'd think. And even though they are smaller than you think, in addition to that, their feet are even smaller than you would think for that small size. They're just they're tiptoeing around, these little tiptoes. And again, the hairs are so coarse and bristly. They're almost as thick as African porcupine. Well, yeah, you know what? I don't have any with me. I've got them at home. African porcupines, the quills they have long quills, and then they have longer quills that are hairs. That they're not really pokey, but that's all quills are. Quills are just hollow hairs. But the shorter, denser ones really stab. But these long hairs, I have had the chance to pet a javelina in captivity, and I've had the chance to pet African porcupines in captivity, and the bristliness, it feels the same. It's thicker on an African porcupine, but it feels identical. And again, that offers protection so they can just charge in through the brush like that. It's pretty remarkable. So they're really, really unique animals. Very strange, very unusual. And here's the question. Where is their range now as opposed to where it used to be? We don't know for sure. A lot of times we have the wrong idea when it comes to animals. We'll just think, oh, whatever animals are here, we like in America, we're like, oh, in the 1800s, there were all these bison, all these buffalo herds, these massive herds, and then people killed them off, and now we're down to this. But what you don't realize is the paleontological record shows that certain species would expand and then contract. The passenger pigeon, which humans hunted to extinction. We did hunt it to extinction, but we also know from historic records that those populations would wax and wane, disease would spread through, and so some years they'd blacken the sky, this is before people were hunting them, and then they'd be reduced down to where you'd hardly see any of them. We have the same thing today with collared doves here in America, a non-native species, and they'll hit a valley and there'll be bajillions of them, and then some sort of bird flu will cut through them all, and the population goes down, and you see a few here and there, and then maybe 5 years later, you have another explosion. You have that thing. You have droughts, you have wet times, we know in the American Southwest that there was a 50-year drought that totally altered the landscape in the southwestern United States and northwestern Mexico, and that altered what people did. It also altered what animals did. Right now, I live in northern Utah, and I grew up with rabbits everywhere, jackrabbits, cottontail rabbits everywhere. Golden eagles and coyotes and badgers hunted them. Well, since 2003, about 2003, we've had a drought, and rabbit populations have tanked. And so now coyote populations are down, badgers are down, and golden eagles will not breed. They pair up, and they'll still defend the territory, but they won't lay eggs. They're like, there's no point. There's not enough food to feed us and our young. So populations can go up and down, and they can change. And if they're down long enough, a new species can come in and alter that. So we know that during the Ice Age, at least 10,000, 9,000 years ago, that we know that there were javelina in California. We don't know how far else they ranged in the Americas. We know that since that time there's been a reduction of range because now you have to go down to southern Arizona, southern New Mexico, southern Texas to find them. They used to range further up north. But when did that reduction in range happen? We are not sure. Now, what's the use of javelinas? Not the use, economic use. I teach in this channel very often about the trade that was going on between Mesoamerica, throughout Mexico, Guatemala, and parts of Central America, up to northwestern Mexico and up to the southwestern current United States. And that trade included things like cacao beans and copper bells and beautiful shells from the Pacific. and live macaws, also thick-billed parrots and military macaws, but especially scarlet macaws. Live macaws were traded. There was advanced trade routes going on, and there were trade of ideas. Now, we know for a fact, in Mesoamerica, we know that the javelinas were kept and were semi-domesticated. They were raised for food. They were raised for their skulls. Their skulls were valuable, and their skulls were often, after post-death, were decorated. Their tusks were used in jewelry, and their meat was used. We also know that they were sacrificed. They were raised for sacrificial purposes. So if you see my video on ritual economies, I potentially should have factored that in. But we also know that this goes all the way back to the Olmec. We have archaeological evidence of javelina being raised all the way back to the Olmec, and up through, Teotihuacan and the Toltec, the Olmecs, and the Chichimecas, all the way up through the Spanish. Even the Spanish documented the keeping of javelinas. But we don't necessarily see that they were ever shipped or kept up north. Now, if they were, it was probably such a small amount that people weren't aware of it. But we don't really, in the southwestern United States tribes, have any documentation of these animals being kept in a semi-domesticated way. Very rarely, we do find rock art depicting them in regions where they are not currently at. Now, these types of rock art are very rare, but they indicate one of a couple things. They could mean that, javelina used to live in this area and they are being depicted. Or it could have mean that from influence down further south, javelina had some ritual importance, and therefore that ritual idea is being shared up north in an area outside of the range, which is no different if you watch my videos about Pottery Mound and macaws being used in depiction. Macaws on mural walls in New Mexico, 700 miles away from the range of macaws. So you could be that too. Now, we don't know all that's out there. And there are some things, I have seen some, if you look, there's a lot of bighorn sheep. There's a lot of bighorn sheep petroglyphs where they'll have, kind of the spiral head. But there's also some that'll look like they have like a tail, but they also have two tusks sticking up. And some people have said, well, these are early mammoth petroglyphs. Could also be a crack at trying to do a javelina. But there are a few that really very much do appear to be as such. Now, in today's world, the tribes of the southwestern United States and peoples of northwestern Mexico today, javelina is very much a part of the culture. It's very much a part of the art. We see it very often in ceramics, pottery, modern artistic depictions and murals. It's very much a part of that culture, that whole Southwest motif. And I love it. I'm here for it. I think they're incredible creatures, and but I want to do more digging into this. So if you know more, please let me know in the comments. I would love to know any other sites of petroglyphs that seem to depict javelina. I would love to know any traditions. I know there are many Native peoples that watch this channel. I would love to know anything from your people, your traditions, your history. Let me know what you know, because I would like this to be a place where we can come together and share information and spread information. And again, I just think this is such an icon of the Southwest that we don't talk enough about it, and I think we should more. So I hope you enjoyed this video, learning a little bit about the javelina. Hopefully I'll have a follow-up video, and hopefully I will be able to film some of these guys in the wild, because I think they're incredible. They're kind of a little scary if you watch some of the videos, just how quickly they can go from "I'm so cute" to just attacking each other. They look absolutely incredible. But again, it's strange, because this was a North American species, a North American clade that spread southward and now is much more considered to be southward and tropical, even though it came from the cold north of North America. No different than jaguars. Jaguars were from the cold north of North America during the Ice Age. They spread south, and now we associate them with the South, even though they started off in the north. So Kind of interesting how that works. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, if you could subscribe to my channel, I very much appreciate it. Helps me keep this up and going. Let me know your comments down below. Let me know other topics of videos you would like. And always remember that life is a gift. So never stop learning and never stop exploring. We'll see you next time.